Welcome to the 100 Authors in 100 Days conversation, where we have writers, entrepreneurs, and luminaries all making a positive impact in the world. So today I am having a conversation with Elis Salamone. She is a retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, and I am super excited because I love her story. She is participating in our Latinas 100 project, and she is one of the writers, one of the co-authors of that book that's being published in December. And I am looking forward to sharing her with you and sharing her amazing story. I also have her amazing essay that she is publishing in the book for December, and I'm going to go over a few things. And as usual for these conversations that we have, I'm going to be asking 3 questions, and we're just going to take it from there. So I want to welcome you to the 100 Authors, 100 Days. How are you?
Good. How are you? I'm so excited. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I love this project.
Thank you. Thank you for participating in it. And I know initially when I first read through all of what we connected, and it was on Facebook, I believe, and I was reading through all your stuff, and I was really fortunate because I found a podcast. I mean, you didn't even post it anywhere, but I found a podcast that you had been on, and I listened through the whole thing. It was like an hour and a half or so. And I just loved everything that you had to share. I was so fascinated by your amazing journey. And I really want to go over this your story. So I have the essay here. Mm-hmm. As you were writing through the essay, the first question from me to you would be, what did you learn about yourself while you were writing this essay?
So I think, at 53, I have a lot of stories. So I think it's trying to figure out which story you think is going to have the most impact. But I think whenever I talk or speak about my journey through becoming a nurse practitioner in Afghanistan, I'm reminded constantly what a resilient person I am. And I think that's probably one of the greatest strengths that I have, that no matter what, I be persisting. I never let no or barriers stop me from accomplishing my goals. And I think that's probably the thing that it just kind of resonated and reminds me, because sometimes I need reminding that I can get through whatever it is I need to get through.
Yes, absolutely. So that was the first question. Let me read your bio so people can listen in. So Elis Salamone has successfully coached and mentored others throughout her entire professional career. As a highly decorated military officer and nurse practitioner, she has led teams in Afghanistan and in stressful medical environments with grace and grit. I love that. Her personal and professional experiences have taught her the power of resiliency, perseverance, and adversity, which has helped her overcome and understand the battered career syndrome, which we definitely want to talk about that a little bit more. After transitioning from military service, finding her happy place in the civilian sector never really happened. So she decided it was time to take all her experiences and love for helping others to start her own business. This is when she discovered the entrepreneur source. At 36 years old, a 36-year-old coaching service that aligned her desire to empower herself and others into career ownership. Her ultimate priority is to help fulfill everyone's potential and see them succeed. And that's amazing. So she holds a master's, she holds 2 masters, okay? That's amazing. In leadership from Regis University in Denver, Colorado, and another in nursing from Virginia Commonwealth University. Wow. Okay. And that's not even the half of it, because there's another bio that had like double this stuff. Okay.
That's a snippet.
Yeah. So earlier you shared what you learned by writing it, and then as I was reading through your essay, there was one section where you talk about when you were in the service, you ended up in the middle of Afghanistan, in the middle of the desert, doing a particular project. And one of the reasons why that was impactful for me as I was reading it was because, some of us they were in the military, we all have different types of careers, right? I work for Space Command and work with satellites or whatnot, but you had a really interesting military career where you started out in the Army and then transitioned over to the Air Force. But that transition basically cost you a lot. Like you write in here that you had to persevere because you had to take a test 9 times before being able to cross over to the Air Force. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So actually, it wasn't to cross over. It's when I was in the Air Force, I got commissioned as a nurse, and there's several different degree levels in nursing that you can stay at the bedside, and there's all kinds of different career paths in nursing. But when I was working in the OR in the Air Force, I realized that I really wanted to become a provider and a nurse practitioner. And the Air Force has this amazing program called AFIT, where when you apply, if you get selected, and it's extremely competitive, they will send you to school to get your graduate degree. For what I was trying to apply was for an 18-month period. You get your master's, become a nurse practitioner. But the beauty of it was that the whole time you're doing this program, you're still active duty, you're still getting paid your full pay, but all you're doing is going to school. So I applied 3 times. The 3rd time I finally got it, but one of the things that was a stumbling block for me, that one of the criteria was you had to get a 950 on your GREs. And most of the schools that I was going to have to apply to, they want you to have a GRE, but that wasn't necessarily a barrier to getting accepted if you didn't make a certain score. But for the Air Force, for the scholarship program, they wanted you to have a minimum of 950 so they can see that you can do graduate work. Well, this was really hard for me because I was already finishing a master's and I already had a 4.0, so I knew I could do the work. I knew that wasn't an issue for me, but I am just not a good standardized testing person, which is actually a thing known for, for minorities because of, whatever educational background we have. So I took the GREs 9 times. I think the 8th time is when I finally got my highest score, which was 910. So I still had to ask for a waiver for the board to still look at my application. But I think they got sick of me sending in the application because I think they were like, okay, obviously this girl really wants this. And she's, so they finally awarded me the scholarship. But it was funny because when I got awarded the scholarship, the 2 people that worked the program in headquarters for the Air Force in San Antonio, they personally sent me an email and they're like, congratulations, we're so glad you didn't give up. And your persistence really paid off. So yeah, so that's the story behind that.
Yeah, I was reading it and I was like, what, 9 times? That is persistence, and that really shows your character. The little that I know of you and what I've read and what I've listened to in the podcast and stuff. So when I read that in the first paragraph, I was like, what? That's, that says a lot. And then, like I shared, there's so many things that you've gone through. So that really caught my eye there. And then in your second paragraph, you're talking about how you were, when you were doing schooling, you were like in the 4.0 GPA level, and you had basically done all the things that you needed to do. At Virginia Commonwealth University, you graduated with 3.9, which was awarded the only graduate award for your advocacy of women veterans, and the list goes on, right? And then you also mentioned here that you're just not a math person, because I'm not a math person. But I have to agree with you that for whatever reason within our community, like I scored really good, like in high school and my grades were good. But when it came to testing, there's no way. I right now I'm taking another math class because one of my personal goals is to make it through my math courses, which and I never have. I did algebra for 7 years. But I'm committed to doing it. So I'm taking a math course just because I want to have that under my belt, right? But the fact that you're sharing this, I'm like, hey, you did it 9 times. There's really, I can do it another 4 or 5 times. So the other thing that you share in your essay is, and then I'm just going to go ahead and read it for the readers. It says, the first time it hit me that we were, well, you're talking about how you ended up in Afghanistan, okay, just to set the stage. It says the first time it hit me that we were in the war zone was when we were taking off the base. We were taking off the base to do the weapons training for Special Forces team. We trained on 50 cals and AK-47 and grenades. I remember the guy saying to us, in the all likelihood that all hell breaks loose and you need to operate any of these weapons, ... All I kept thinking was that it would be really sad. It would be a really sad day on Earth if a team had to depend on me to get out of a combat situation. Later that morning, we were to train on throwing grenades. Oh my God. We had to walk across a huge field at the foot of some mountains. The scenery looked like we could have been in Colorado, but I was quickly reminded that we were in Afghanistan. And I'm reading it slowly because I just can't believe it. Like, it's so amazing that you experienced this. I'm like, whoa. And the fact that, see, when I think of Afghanistan, I think of like brown and desert, kind of like here, Las Vegas is very flat and desert, but you're saying that it looked like Colorado.
Well, the thing is that Afghanistan has a lot of variations in the terrain. In that particular scenario, there was a lot of grass and the mountains almost look like sand, but Colorado has a lot. Like when you fly, in fact, when I was flying back home from deployment, me and there was another guy that was just coming back from a deployment as well. And we were flying over Colorado and we both looked at each other at the exact same time. And we're like, my God, this looks like Afghanistan, because the mountains look, they're very sandy. So it's like high desert. And yeah, so Afghanistan looks the same, looks a lot like that. It looks like New Mexico, Colorado terrain. It's the best way that I can describe it. And people think of Colorado, they think of a lot of trees and all of that, but Colorado it's really a high desert, but especially like if you go up in the sands and like certain parts of Colorado Springs and all that.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just thought Colorado, like all green and like forest and all that stuff. Wow, that's amazing. So I'm reading this, and my question to you is, were you prepared to handle all of those weapons?
Oh God, no. And I can tell you, I got told on a Friday that I was deploying to Afghanistan, and the following Friday I was gone. And I was so stressed that week trying to get all that training done and all the paperwork done that I had to get done. And I had to re-qualify in the weapon. Now, mind you, at that point in my career, I had been in the military, close to 20 years between the Army and the Air Force. And I've always done very well with marksmanship. But I was so stressed out that it took me going back to the Air Force Academy to the range 3 times to qualify to be able to deploy. I am not, it's fun. It's fun doing it in training. And I think if I was in a combat zone and I had to perform, I think I would perform. But I'm not a natural marksman person at all. So it was fun, but the thought of having to actually perform in a combat situation was scary as hell to me, because I'm like, oh my God, could I perform? Would I be able to have that muscle memory from all this training to actually do this if we got stuck in a bad situation? Luckily, I never had to, I was never put in that situation, but
you were in the middle of things. So yeah. So I find that fascinating that you're being trained, you go and you make sure that you qualify to be able to be deployed. And then you don't mention it in this essay. I'm just mentioning a few things that I heard from a podcast that you did. And you end up, on this aircraft, and then they just basically drop you with all of your equipment, and then sayonara, and then you're like, what, and I find it interesting because usually for Air Force, we're kind of like the pampered military service, right? Where Air Force, I remember I I did a TDY to Panama, and Marine, Navy, Army, they were all like on base or living in a tent, and the Air Force put me up at a 5-star hotel in the middle of Panama City, overseeing the entire city with a car, and I didn't have to wear my uniform to work. So you know what I mean? So when I was like, wow, here we have you, a military officer, being deployed to Afghanistan, and then you're basically being here you go, you jump off a plane, and then you're living outside, like you had your own, I guess it wasn't the barracks, but it was like these.
So what's interesting about where I was deployed, Tinsley, which is the name of the forward base I was deployed at, was actually one of the first military compounds in the middle of Afghanistan in the war zone. And actually, if you watched National Geographic Behind the Green Beret, there's actually a segment on there of the exact place I was at.
Oh.
So actually, my conditions weren't bad because that base had been there for over 10 years. So they had been building it up. Every team built it up a little bit more. And we actually had air conditioning, and we had, there were mud huts, but it wasn't like living in a tent. So it wasn't, the conditions themselves weren't bad. I mean, we had latrines and all of that, but the conditions weren't bad. It was just that we were literally in the middle of nowhere. They call it the triangle of death because of where we were in Afghanistan.
Wow.
But it was a hot area, and there had been a lot of deaths in that area and a lot of combat. When I was there, I was very blessed that I personally we never got attacked or anything, but we lost 3 guys of our team, during that time that we were there.
Yeah. I mean, you were in the middle of it. I remember you sharing. And then another little piece that I remember was that, you had all your equipment, and then you go into the room, and then when you come out, you lock yourself out. And you had mentioned something about that.
You froze.
Can you hear me now? How about now? How about now? There we go.
Oh, you're there. There you go.
Great. That was just a couple of seconds. So another thing that I remember you saying was that when you had dropped off, when you had all your and you get to your room, you put everything in there, and then when you come out, you lock yourself out.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then all the guys were like, "What's going on?"
I'm telling you, I gave these guys probably the best laugh. Like, they had bets going that I would not last there more than 24 hours because I was such a mess. I, locked myself out of my room, and then the guys were like, "Why are you locking your room?" And I'm like, they taught us about, personal security. I don't know any of these people, so I was locking myself out of the room, but I was so out of myself that first 24, 48 hours. I was just doing, I just did dumb stuff.
I can't even imagine. Yeah, because, you're in the middle of war zone. And I also remember that one of the guys is like, "Nobody's going to take anything. Don't worry about it."
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know you.
I love it. So you share that you share some of it in the essay. And then another thing that you share in here is, this experience that you had with an IED. Can you share with the viewers what an IED is?
Yeah, so it's an improvised explosive device. It's what kills and hurts a lot of soldiers in combat zones in Afghanistan and Iraq. But basically what happened is the Taliban, they bury explosive devices, and they either watch when teams are crossing for them and explode them, or they're triggered by us walking by them. And we've lost many of our military loss has been because of IED. So it's really serious. And it's one of the things that when we did combat training before we went to Afghanistan, I was very on edge the whole time trying to soak in all this training because I was like, I knew the seriousness of it. So anyways, the second day we were in Afghanistan, we go to training. They want us to learn more about how to run these weapons. And part of that was that we needed to throw grenades. So we were walking across this big field. And as I'm walking with one of the other nurse practitioners that was with me, I look over to my left, and I'll never forget this. But there was a piece of a rocket sticking out of the sand, and I noticed it, and I looked over to Jen and I said, oh my God, I think that's an IED. And she's like, no, no, no. And I got a little bit, probably was stupid, but I got a little bit closer to it because I couldn't believe it. Not enough where I think, well, who knows what could have happened, but God was protecting me. Mm-hmm. And then I walked over to the team sergeant, and I said, hey, I think there's an IED back there. And he's like, yeah. I mean, I'll give him credit. And I always say this, that he did take, he went over there. And when he went over there, I think that's their eyes got really big and they're like, yeah, this is something. And they called the explosive EOD guy. They got him there. And yeah, there was 25 buried rockets in that area. And how none of us got hurt that day is just God watching over us, because people had walked by it. There was Jeeps that had driven by it and no one triggered it. And, who knows how long it had been there. Maybe it was old, old stuff, but it was pretty shiny, and I noticed it, and I was really proud of myself. But that was the first time I was like, holy shit, we're at war. We're in a combat zone. And that was, a first reality check for, the situation that we were in.
Yeah, it's like I'm reading through it, and I'm listening to a podcast. I'm reading your essay. I'm, digging deep in your background, and I'm like, wow, like I'm just so, number one, very honored that you are having this conversation with me, and number two, respect you so much for your service. And it's one thing to say that you were in the military, but it's totally different when you can say that you were deployed in a hot zone and doing what you've done and what you've accomplished. And it's just such an honor. So I'm so grateful.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for your service too.
You're welcome. And then the other thing that you mentioned here is that, you had mixed emotions about that. Can you share a little bit about that?
Afghanistan came at a really interesting time in my career. I had just finished nurse practitioner school. I had just gotten to Peterson. My husband at the time had just moved. I just got stationed in Colorado. It all happened really fast. I didn't go with the team. Like normally the Air Force has a habit of like deploying us in onesies and twosies, but we deployed individually from all around the country. And I just felt very unprepared because we were never given a clear mission about what we were trying to do, why they picked us. And in fact, when we got to Bagram and this Lieutenant Colonel Army doctor saw us, she said, oh my God, you guys are all like officers, senior officers, and you're all providers. And that was not the request for forces that the Army has sent out. They just wanted med techs to help to augment the special forces team so that they can try to gather information, from the other part of the population, which was women. They wanted to try to reach, women to see if they can get more information. And we're not trained for that. We're not intel officers. We're medical officers. Yeah. So it just was, frankly, it was just a very it was a poor strategy, and whoever thought of it just didn't really understand what was going on the ground and the cultural aspects of this. And we didn't really have a clear mission. We were trained to do combat skills, and we got dropped off at these operational bases with these teams, and these guys didn't know what to do with us, and we didn't really know, what our true mission was. I just felt very ill prepared, and I came to a FOB that had been established for a long time. I just felt very ill prepared. Like I wish I could go back now with what I know and how there's so many other things that I would have done differently. But I think, and that's why I say I feel some shame, because I feel like I didn't do enough. Like I could have done more. I made some poor judgment calls on a personal basis when I was there. And I just have a lot of mixed emotions, to include pride. I feel proud that I actually served in that capacity in my military career. And I feel proud of the people I did save when I was there, because I think that all the experience that I had, all the nursing experience I had, really came to a head when I was there. I saw some horrific pediatric trauma there that, there's those kids I'll never forget. And I saw a lot of death and a lot of trauma from the civilian sector, that there were people that I couldn't save. And, but I did the best I could. Like I said, it's just, you have a little bit of that imposter syndrome. What am I doing here? What am I supposed to do here? What is my mission? And then you do the best that you can and you survive it. And it's very easy for me to go back and have hindsight. But at the time, I probably did the best I could, but I know that I could have done better. I wish I could have done some things differently, but it is what it is,
Yeah. You didn't know what you didn't know. And at the same time, I love the fact that you bring up like the imposter syndrome, because there's so many of us that, have it. I mean, we have to not even get over it, but just get through it and just say, you know what? No, it is what it is, and, move forward. So from an outsider looking at your story and listening to everything that you've gone through, to me, you're like the biggest hero. To me, it's like, oh my God, that's so amazing. And then I just heard you say that there's maybe some shame around not being able to do more, so I find that interesting that, here I am, your biggest cheerleader, and then yet you can still look at your story and feel like you didn't do enough, so there's like this disconnect, right? Between what's really happening. And I guess that we all choose what it was that really happened. Another thing that I want to bring up is that you had shared, not necessarily in this essay, but you had shared how you also helped build a hospital, clinic there, and then you were helping not just military, not just the military personnel, but you were also helping the locals. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things with that. There was a clinic. There was a little outbuilding on our FOB, in our camp, that when I first got there, it had been, I don't know if it had been bombed out, but the ceiling had falling in, and it was a mess. So one of the first things we did is, when I got there, I said, well, let's clean this up. And we cleaned it up and organized the medication with some of the other people on the team. And we started running a clinic. So at first, it was all the kids from the local village coming, because they thought they were going to get lollipops or whatever, and that's who they let in. And, we taught them how to wash their hands and did some personal hygiene, little education things. But then slowly the kids, the clients or patients started coming in with injuries and with a lot of skin issues. Then it got word out that there was an American female doctor on the camp. So then things really started kind of, patients started to come in. And then one of the projects they had when I was there is they wanted to open up or build a women's center there for the village, which we eventually accomplished. But unfortunately, because of the culture there, the way it is, the locals didn't appreciate the concept of what we were trying to do. And there was a lot of cultural, bad stuff with that, because they thought all kinds of crazy things that weren't true. We were just trying to help them and trying to do something for them. But again, that's what I say, that, the Afghanistan, there was a very misguided, locally on the ground, there were a lot of misguided cultural issues that, the higher ups just didn't get. So there was that. And then I also connected with some of the local medical doctor that was there. And we kind of did some training with the women and had a dinner and just try to do relationship building with them. But, the thing that was interesting was that by the time I left Afghanistan, I had taken care of a lot of the locals, and a lot of the local men worked on the camp, doing construction projects around the camp and cooking and all of that. And I remember one time we went out on a mission, and one of the little girls walked me to where her family was, and the wife said, "Thank you for I literally had taken care of every taken care of almost every member of that family throughout that point. And when I left, one of the things that was interesting was that even the Afghan locals that I had taken care of, they had tears in their eyes, and they're like, who's going to take care of us now? Because I really had taken care of a lot of them for numerous different things, you know? So that was one part of Afghanistan that I realized I did do good work and I made a difference. And there is a part of that kind of warms my heart. But yeah, I mean, that's a good story.
When I was listening to you share that, I was like, that's amazing. That's so neat. You all have to, just whoever's listening out there, you all have to listen to this podcast, okay? Because there's so many more details. It's just like so amazing. She's being really humble right now, but there's so many things that she did in particular with that clinic and everything that I believe that it's definitely worth a listen. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that really captivated me about your story is that you were such an essential part of this, I call it like healing. It was almost like God had placed you there so you could heal a certain group of people.
Yeah.
Because as we all know, doctors and nurses and anybody who's in I call it the healing arts, where that's, we're placed in positions where we get to help people that way. But definitely, I think that's amazing that you share that story. So, there is this lovely recap that you do in your essay. And I put some notes in this essay and I'm like, oh my God, I'm definitely going to do a meme for you with this quote that you wrote. Like, it's so good. Like
I love it.
I'm going to meme you out, girl. But the way that you wrap up the essay, I love it. Okay. So I just want to read it for the audience to listen. So, she says, as a civilian, I had resigned, been laid off and terminated from my jobs. I have struggled to find my way and tell my story to inspire and help others avoid the same mistakes I made. As a woman veteran, I have used my platform to change the narrative about what a woman veteran looks like, our roles in the military, and how we transition. I love that. And then she says, I utilize my story to help inspire others to create change in their life, to see the positive in the direst situations and to continue moving forward. We are not our failures. Failures are not the end of our story, but stepping stones to our greatness. Overcoming shame, failure, trauma, and disappointment is all part of our lifetime on earth. The thing I strive for the most is to live a full life and to share my story in hopes that it will inspire others to keep moving forward no matter what adversity they are going through. I'm a survivor. I'm a warrior. Remember this, the storm never lasts forever.
I just got chills and I wrote that.
I love it. This is so good. Oh my God, this is so good. Yeah, I got chills too. Because that was such a nice wrap up of, this one story. Because really, we talked about a lot of things right now. And some of them were not even in the essay. But I know it's very difficult when you're writing, right? Like, which story do I share? Because there's so many stories. I mean, you have the story of the clinic and the story of really, even you could write a story about how you grew up and before coming to the States and your transit. There's so many things, but the fact that you chose this one, which is interesting because before you sent me the essay, I was thinking, oh, I hope she chooses to share this about how she was dropped off in Afghanistan. And I was like, yes, she did. So, and then the way that you write, so you share the story, which you all can read, in the book when it's published in December. And at the end of, it's just a beautiful wrap up. I love the way that you use your words. And, I've always believed in my heart, from the bottom of my gut is that we're not our failures. And even more that there's really no such thing as a failure. It's just that we all have these experiences, right?
But society, we have to change that narrative, because I think as adults and as Americans in particular, I think as humans, we look at failures and sometimes we can really get stuck there. And it's like, it's a lesson. A failure is only a true failure if you don't learn from it. And that's, if you have a failure and you keep making the same mistake over again and you don't learn from it, that's when it's a true failure. And even then, I think you learn, but for whatever reason, your human spirit keeps making that same mistake. But I think that some of my greatest failures have actually made me who I am as a person and as a woman. And they were lessons, and in fact, recently my mom said to me, she goes, "I'm really proud of how much you've grown in the last few years." And, that was a great compliment, because, moms are tough. And we were talking about relationships, and she says, "I think you finally have grown up when it comes to this part of your life." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah, because I think too, as Latinas, we really value our mother's opinion. Right?
I know I do.
Yeah, we want to make mom happy. But wow, so this has been such a wonderful conversation. I think that you're one of those people that I could share with and have conversations with for like a long time.
Yes.
So I definitely want to do this again. Possibly in other areas of your story. I think that you have so much to share and so much wisdom and knowledge that it would benefit anybody, listening in to, tune in with you, tune into your webpage, which all the links will be below, and then read more about you. And, just to wrap it up, I want to ask you to share with the audience, what your intention is behind leaving this story, and what your intention is for leaving your legacy for the younger Latina generation.
I would say that my biggest reason for sharing the story and getting involved with this project is, for one, I think the biggest thing is that when I was growing up, besides my mom, there were no other women that looked like us that were successful and powerful and creating change in their communities. Not that I was aware of anyways. And back in the day, the internet wasn't a thing. So I want to be that inspiration to other young Latino boys and girls to say, you do not have to be or continue the cycle, whatever that cycle is in your life, in your world. You don't have to continue it. You can get out of it, but you have to sometimes just be your own hero. If you don't see the hero there or the mentor that's there for you, then you need to be that for yourself, because it's up to you ultimately to be the power in your life to create that change that you want.
Yes, that's so powerful. That is so powerful. Well, I want to thank you for chatting with me this Saturday morning. I so appreciate you. I hope that we can continue to connect.
Yes.
Continue to share. Before this conversation, I know we were talking about maybe doing a different type of conversation. I would love to.
We need to.
I definitely want to pursue that with you.
Yes.
And I just want to say just how honored and how privileged I feel to know somebody like you. You just said that you want to be able to inspire the boys and girls, but you're inspiring me, a grown woman, just
Aww.
by being who you are. And and then to top it off, you're Puerto Riqueña, you're Latina, and just like you, I didn't see a lot of women in positions of power growing up. So for me, we have I believe the same heart for what kind of legacy we want to leave in the world. So I just feel so blessed to know you and to have interacted with you. So
it's been an honor. And hey, you're doing some wonderful things. And this project is, as soon as I saw the application for, I was like, I've got to get involved because this is wonderful. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So stay tuned, everyone, for the following conversations. And I definitely am going to leave all the links below so you can get a hold of Elis Salamone, and it'll be the link to her webpage, to her projects. And if you are interested in participating in the Latinas 100 project, an anthology with powerful Latinas that is going to be published in December, I encourage you, just click click on the link below and check us out. Thank you so much. And with that, thank you for listening to the 100 Authors, 100 Days conversation with Adriana, and I'll talk to you soon.